Chosen one, all right, listen up, because this isn't just another feel-good pep talk. This is for the ones who've been counted out, lied on, set up, and still had the nerve to rise with grace. You know who you are. The ones who could have snapped, could have dragged everybody, could have let the whole world burn just to prove a point, but didn't. You held your fire. You chose elevation over ego. And while people were busy trying to break your spirit, you were quietly building legacy. This space right here, this is your reminder that you are not crazy for choosing peace in a war zone. You're not weak for walking away from chaos. You're not soft for not clapping back. You're strategic. You're powerful. You're chosen. And chosen ones don't just survive mess. They flip it into meaning. They don't beg for seats. They build the whole damn table. So welcome. This moment is for you. This space is your confirmation. You've been forged, not just tested. The fact that you're still standing is proof that you're built different. You're not here by accident. You're here because the world needs exactly you. And trust me, after what you've walked through, this next chapter, it's about to be wild, divine, and undeniable. Let's get into why your silence is louder than their noise and why your presence is rewriting the whole narrative. Ready? Let's go, looking for purpose and peace. Hit subscribe and start the journey. You move through chaos like a sculptor through marble, not dodging the blows, but shaping them. You aren't simply surviving what others throw your way, you're redesigning it into something that can't touch you. Where others would unravel trying to clear their name or match insult with insult, you refine your silence into something sharper than confrontation. There's a stillness to your stride that unsettles people who expect noise. They want reaction, drama, collapse. But what they meet is unshaken poise. The very mess that was supposed to expose you ends up highlighting the discipline they underestimated. While others busy themselves with defensive speeches or passive-aggressive parades, you let time confirm what emotion never could. Not because you are unaware, but because you are unbothered in a way that feels almost unreal. Every slight, every jab, every whispered attempt at sabotage is absorbed and diffused, not because you are immune to pain, but because you refuse to be defined by it. That unsettles those who hoped to see you flinch. They can't figure out how you stay intact, how you keep your integrity in a storm designed to rip it away. The real reason: you don't allow chaos to shape your character. You walk through it without collecting its residue, and in doing so, you turn every attempt to bury you into quiet proof that you were never standing on shallow ground. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. You rise without pulling others down, and that alone disrupts the whole rhythm. In a climate built on conquest through manipulation, your strength lies in refusing the game entirely, not by shouting about what you deserve, but by embodying it so relentlessly that it cannot be denied. No one can trace your progress to deception or disguise. It comes from a rhythm only discipline can teach. While others curate their image, you're too busy refining your reality. You don't corner others to move ahead. You expand so wide there's no room to ignore you. And it's not applause you're after, it's accuracy. That's why influence finds you without you chasing it. You don't compete for the spotlight. You become impossible to overlook by mastering what can't be faked. Consistency, clarity, depth. The ones who tried to dismiss you now borrow your tone, echo your words, and mimic your manner, all while pretending they got there first. But no imitation holds the same weight. What you built didn't come from strategy, it came from alignment. It's not dominance they fear, It's your refusal to engage in their version of the race. Because you didn't ask for power, you became someone it naturally flows to. That's the kind of authority that turns heads, quietly, permanently. There's a kind of resilience that doesn't roar or retaliate. It just refuses to decay. It walks into the wreckage with open eyes, not to become part of it, but to prove it holds no power. It doesn't pretend the air is clean, but it never lets the fumes settle in its lungs. That's what makes the silence so loud. There's no need to mirror cruelty, to echo the tone of those who thrive on drama. The strength lies in remaining untouched, not by absence of exposure, but by choice. Even when betrayal circles like smoke around a fire, even when manipulation hums beneath false kindness, the spirit doesn't break rank. It watches, it learns, and then it chooses not to repeat. Not because it couldn't retaliate, but because retaliation would cost too much of what it's fought to preserve. Anyone can collapse into bitterness. Anyone can spit back venom. But it takes a rare kind of focus to hold still in chaos without absorbing its noise. When the easy path is bitterness and the tempting one is revenge, it picks neither. It chooses alignment, and that confuses the world around it. People wait for a crack, a misstep, a public outburst, but none comes, because inner clarity isn't shaken by outer madness. Not everyone understands that kind of calm. Some envy it, some resent it, but most just don't know how to mimic it. They expect retaliation, and instead, they're met with peace. They prepare for destruction, and instead they watch someone exit with their integrity folded neatly under their arm. There's no grand speech, no dramatic scene, just a presence that refuses to be stained by what it's walked through. That stays with people. That shifts how they think. That kind of control doesn't demand attention. It earns quiet reverence. When your heart is full of God's love, it's a sign to give. By tapping the super thank you button and offering $100 or more, you become a vessel of His grace. Your generosity can change lives, reaching hearts you may never meet. You have a divine purpose, and this act of faith carries His light forward. Give now, and may His blessings surround you always. They calculate your collapse before it even begins, assuming they've laid the perfect groundwork. Every whisper, every subtle sabotage, every staged confrontation is just another move in a game they're sure you'll lose. They're betting on your eruption, waiting for the first slip, the first emotional crack, the first flash of defensiveness to paint you as the problem. What they never consider is the quiet resilience that doesn't play by their design. While they orchestrate drama, you're reconfiguring every setback into structure, not just enduring, but reconstructing, not just staying quiet, but growing loud in all the ways they can't silence. They aren't prepared for that. They can't anticipate someone who doesn't retaliate, but redirects. Instead of falling into their trap, you reshape it into a staircase. What was intended to be a downfall becomes the exact thing that sharpens your focus and expands your reach. There's no need for spectacle, no need to trade punches. You're not in the business of retaliation. You're in the business of transformation. That unsettles them more than any confrontation ever could. Because the more they try to confine you, the more you redefine the space. Their efforts to discredit only make your growth more visible. Not out of vengeance, but out of design. Not to prove anything to them, but to honor the power of restraint, the strength of vision. Your journey becomes a case study in redirected momentum, and what echoes in the silence they left behind is not their false narrative, but your undeniable evolution. Now the spotlight they tried to weaponize turns to you naturally, not because you fought for it, but because your consistency made it impossible to ignore. They anticipate a scene. They expect a defense, a long explanation, some emotional detour that proves their assumptions right. They want a display, a signal that their pressure worked. But the moment never arrives. There's no speech, no plea, no performance. The silence isn't uncertainty, it's assurance. While they build narratives in crowded corners, you're too grounded to be dragged into that theater. You don't speak to be believed. You exist in a way that leaves nothing to argue with. What they can't grasp is that you never needed their recognition to feel real. While they keep waiting for you to shrink, you expand, untouched and uninterrupted. They throw opinions like darts in the dark, but you're not standing on the same floor. They talk while you build. They assume while you evolve. There's no need for declarations or dramatic returns. You wear your truth so naturally that anything else sounds like static. And that unsettles them, not because you're forceful, but because your certainty makes them question their noise. Even in your quiet, there's volume, the movement, the progress, the way your consistency reshapes everything. It's louder than confrontation could ever be. And now, the ones who dismissed you revisit their own doubts while you move forward without once asking for permission. You don't wait for applause, and still the room shifts when you enter. They wanted a battle. Instead, they got a lesson. Not because you fought back, but because you never stepped down. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. They build their games around reaction. And when they don't get one, the whole scheme collapses. The provocations are deliberate, designed to pull you into the same pattern they're trapped in. But you watch it play out without blinking. Their antics, their false alarms, their need to be seen, it all floats around you, but never sticks. You don't explain, defend, or get caught repeating yourself. You've already outgrown the level where they need you to stumble. The trick is simple. You refuse to be bait. No matter how dramatic the setup, you don't feed it your focus. That's what disrupts them most. They plan chaos, and you respond with complete stillness. Not because you're ignoring it, but because you see through it. You deny them the one thing they depend on, your participation. While they try to draw a crowd, you disappear into your own momentum. You don't engage in their patterns because they offer nothing you need. And slowly, without confrontation, the noise fades. The schemes lose steam. Their desperation becomes its own evidence. While they spiral, you rise, not from a place of pride, but from clarity. And that quiet refusal to perform becomes the very thing that exposes the game. There's no need for revenge, just distance, just discipline, just a sharp refusal to trade your peace for a moment of temporary control. That choice makes everything around you shift, and what falls apart wasn't yours to carry anyway. They misread your silence as softness, as if your refusal to erupt means you're powerless. They mistake your calm for emptiness, never realizing it's the result of years of sharpening what others waste on noise. You've felt the heat rise in your chest, the weight of words that beg to be thrown. But you pause, not from fear, but from clarity, because you know destruction is easy, but discipline is rare. There's a strength in restraint that doesn't show up in outbursts. It's the kind of strength that lets storms pass without chasing them. Not every wound needs to be broadcast. Not every blow needs a counterpunch. There's something radical about choosing stillness when you could scorch everything. That unsettles people more than anger ever could. They prepare for backlash, for a dramatic unraveling, but instead, they get a steady pace, a gaze that doesn't flinch, a presence that doesn't fold. The truth is, you don't need to match their mess. You've outgrown the urge to be understood by those who trade chaos for attention. What they call passivity is actually power in its rawest form. Power that doesn't need witnesses to prove itself. And the irony? The ones who laughed at your silence now fear what it says about them. Because while they chase reaction, you've chosen reflection. And what they can't figure out is how you win without ever entering the arena they set on fire. When your heart is full of God's love, it's a sign to give. By tapping the super thank you button and offering $100 or more, you become a vessel of His grace. Your generosity can change lives, reaching hearts you may never meet. You have a divine purpose, and this act of faith carries His light forward. Give now, and may His blessings surround you always. You don't need confrontation to expose what's broken. You become the pause that interrupts the performance. While others scramble to hide behind versions of themselves, you stand as is. No filter, no theatrics. That alone begins to shake the illusions they worked so hard to maintain. Not by attacking, but by simply existing in alignment. They spin webs, but you're not caught in them. You walk past untouched, and in doing so, you unravel their control. You become a quiet contrast to their noise, a signal they can't distort. Their discomfort isn't about you. It's about the truth you reflect back at them. Not through lectures or arguments, but through your consistency, your composure, your refusal to fold. You hold up a lens they never agreed to look through. And now, their patterns are impossible to hide. Every time they try to provoke, you reveal how loud their emptiness is. Every time they try to pull you down, your stability makes it obvious who's actually sinking. They can't twist your silence into guilt because it's grounded in self-trust. The tension they feel isn't from confrontation, it's from revelation. They wanted a spectacle. Instead, they got a living reminder of what accountability looks like, and that more than anything is what they fear. There's a weight in the way you move, not heavy, but deliberate. Like each step has been measured against something greater than the moment. While others move recklessly, assuming no one sees behind their curtains, you act like every decision echoes beyond the room. Not because of fear, but because of understanding. You don't chase revenge or sync to their frequency. You're not driven by the thrill of winning petty battles. You're guided by something rooted far deeper. You know that choices cast shadows and some stains outlast apologies. That's why you don't flinch when wronged or rush to return the strike. You move with a quiet awareness, grounded in principle, not in appearance. Not because it's popular, not because it earns applause, but because integrity doesn't ask for witnesses. And while others believe they've escaped consequence, throwing masks over motives, you know better. What's sown eventually surfaces, no matter how carefully hidden. So you stay clean, not because it's easy, but because you value what can't be repaired once corrupted. The calm you carry isn't submission, it's a knowing, a trust in a balance that doesn't need your interference to correct what's crooked. People don't always recognize it at first. They confuse your calm with indecision, your silence with naivety. But with time, the layers peel back. False stories collapse. Truth begins to seep through every crack. And while they scramble to maintain their illusions, you keep rising, untouched, unbothered. Not because you're lucky, but because you've been in alignment long before the chaos arrived. The clarity you move with isn't for show, it's for survival. And now, without raising your voice or swinging back, you stand where they never expected to see you, elevated not by force, but by staying in tune with what's real. That's not a win built on applause. That's a legacy built on awareness. What was meant to undo you became the turning point you built from. Not because it was painless, but because you refused to let it strip you of meaning. While others look for exits, you stayed long enough to decode the pattern, to understand what this storm was really sent to uncover. You didn't just withstand it, you let it remake you. You didn't walk away trying to erase the experience. You let it carve new depth into your foundation. You didn't beg to be rescued. You chose to transform. Where most would detach, shrink, or harden, you stepped further into yourself. Not out of pride, but out of purpose. You found clarity buried beneath the mess. You found direction in what was meant to leave you disoriented. You gave shape to chaos instead of running from it. And in doing so, you created a version of yourself that didn't exist before. This was never just about surviving. It was about claiming something no one could hand you, your own rebirth. You didn't let the pain narrate the rest of your life. You took it, examined it, and built something functional and honest from the pieces. The old self didn't collapse for nothing. It made room for something sharper, more intentional. You carry the experience, but it doesn't carry you. It's stitched into who you've become, not as a burden, but as proof. And now people notice not just that you made it through, but how different you are because of it. There's a richness to your presence that can't be imitated. Because it wasn't taught, it was earned. You don't wear the weight of what you endured. You wear the insight it gave you. That kind of evolution can't be manufactured. It comes only from walking through what should have broken you and choosing instead to let it build the architecture of a stronger mind, a cleaner heart, and a more honest life. You don't escape the ruins. You rise through them, redesigned. They expect you to panic, to scramble, to defend, to clear up what they've distorted. But you don't move a muscle. While they scramble to broadcast their version of events, you remain anchored, not out of indifference, but out of insight. You understand the difference between what's urgent and what's inevitable. Their fabrications spread quickly, dressed in false conviction and inflated certainty. But you don't chase behind them with explanations. You know that narratives built on false ground collapse under their own weight. While others rush to prove themselves, you allow silence to work like a slow tide, erasing footprints that never belonged. The beauty of patience is that it gives illusion enough time to contradict itself. The ones who listened blindly start noticing the gaps. The details shift, the certainty wavers, the noise softens until even the loudest doubters start to squint at the story they once clung to. And you haven't said a word, no exposés, no call-outs, no emotional outbursts, just presence, just consistency. And now the story is shifting, not because you argued, but because it couldn't hold its shape without resistance. That's the part they didn't prepare for. They counted on your reaction, not your restraint. They assumed silence meant surrender, not strategy. But now they face a different kind of reckoning, not from you, but from the unraveling of their own plot. What once seemed like evidence fades into questions. What was once a crowd becomes a mirror. Their effort to stain your name begins to smudge their own. And all the while, you remain untouched, unbothered. Not because you escaped judgment, but because you trusted the slow burn of clarity over the quick fix of confrontation. The lie decays, not by force, but by exposure. And what's left standing isn't just your name. It's the power of choosing grace over reaction, and the wisdom of knowing some storms blow themselves out without your interference. They expect a show, a grand gesture, a defensive speech, a tearful explanation, neatly packaged for public digestion. But they get nothing. Not a word. Not a gesture. Not even a glance. You're not here to entertain projections or play into their script. You exit the space where opinion holds power and return to your peace, unshaken. While they build their identity around sympathy, twisting narratives for attention and clinging to shallow alliances, you simply remove yourself. No protest, no exposure, just clarity. Their assumptions echo unanswered. Their versions float with no friction. And that's what unsettles them most. You do not play the game they trained for. You choose solitude over spectacle. And still, your presence grows louder in your absence. They feed off reactions, applause, outrage, anything that validates their staged roles. But you're not acting. You never were. You don't contort your truth to win favor. You don't contort your emotions for a standing ovation. You're not interested in being crowned by the crowd. What you carry can't be captured in a post or won in a debate. You understand that real alignment doesn't demand explanation. And so, you let things be misread, let people believe what they want, because time reveals what performance cannot sustain. Eventually, the masks loosen, the crafted tales unravel, and the audience, once captivated by noise, turns quiet. In that stillness, what remains is what was always real, and that includes you, the one who never needed to be center stage to hold center truth, the one who walked away, not to disappear, but to grow somewhere they never thought to look. And now, the silence you chose is the loudest thing they hear. You carry what cuts you without turning it into a weapon, not by pretending it doesn't hurt, and not by masking it with distractions or shallow optimism. You let the weight sit where it lands. You feel the sting in full detail, the disappointment, the disrespect, the disillusionment. You allow it to be real without letting it dictate who you become. Where others might lash out, you lean inward. You don't look for a target to offload the ache. You choose instead to study it, to understand its shape and story. Not for revenge, but for release. That's the difference. You don't recycle the pain into patterns. You don't let the damage duplicate through your actions. You hold it close, not to dwell, but to dissolve it piece by piece, until what remains is something wiser, not heavier.